Welcome back to our channel, where we dive into the darkest corners of storytelling. Today, we unravel a chilling tale that will leave you questioning the very nature of reality. Imagine moving into your dream home, only to discover that something sinister lurks within its walls. This is exactly what happened to Jack and Anna when they found an old mirror with a dark secret in their new home. As they delved deeper, the mirror began to show reflections that weren't quite right, and soon, it became clear that it was not just the house that was haunted. Stick around as we explore the terrifying journey of Jack and Anna and the mirror that might have followed them. If you enjoy spine-chilling stories and eerie mysteries, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and let's delve into the shadows together. Jack and Anna had been married for nearly a decade when they moved into the old stone house at the edge of the forest. It was a place they had always dreamed of, away from the city's bustle, surrounded by trees that sang with the wind and a garden that Anna could nurture into a beautiful haven. Jack, an architect by profession, had fallen in love with the house the moment he saw it. Its high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and old-world charm were exactly what he had always wanted to call home. The house had belonged to an old couple who had passed away years ago. It had remained abandoned for a long time, and the townspeople often said the place was haunted. But Jack and Anna didn't believe in such things. To them, it was just an old house waiting to be loved again. They spent weeks renovating the place, bringing it back to life. Anna painted the walls in soft, warm colors, while Jack repaired the creaky floorboards and restored the fireplace. The house felt alive again, as if it had been waiting for them to arrive. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Jack came across a large antique mirror hidden behind a dusty stack of old furniture. The mirror was exquisite, taller than either of them, with a frame carved from dark wood that twisted and coiled like vines. The glass was smudged and cloudy, but Jack could see that underneath the grime, it was a masterpiece. Jack called, his voice echoing through the attic. "Anna, come look at this." Anna climbed up the rickety ladder, brushing cobwebs from her hair as she entered the dimly lit space. Her eyes widened when she saw the mirror. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her hand reaching out to touch the frame. "We should bring it downstairs." Jack hesitated for a moment. There was something strange about the mirror, something that made his stomach twist with unease. But Anna was already excited, and her enthusiasm was infectious. They carefully carried the mirror down to their bedroom and hung it on the wall opposite their bed. Once it was in place, Anna stepped back to admire it. "It fits perfectly," she said, smiling at Jack. "I love it." Jack nodded, though he still couldn't shake the odd feeling that had settled in his chest since finding the mirror. But he said nothing, not wanting to spoil the moment for Anna. That night, as they lay in bed, Jack found himself staring at the mirror. The moonlight streamed in through the windows, casting soft shadows across the room. The mirror reflected the faint glow of the moon, but there was something strange about the reflection. It wasn't quite right. The room in the mirror seemed darker, the shadows deeper. And though Jack could see his and Anna's reflections lying in bed, there was something off about the way they looked. It was as if the figures in the mirror were just a fraction of a second behind their real movements, mimicking them but not quite in sync. Jack whispered, his voice barely audible in the stillness of the night. "Anna, Anna, wake up." Anna murmured sleepily. "Yes. Do you notice anything strange about the mirror?" Anna opened her eyes and glanced over at the mirror. She studied it for a moment, then shrugged. "It's just old. Maybe the glass is warped." Jack nodded, though he wasn't convinced. He forced himself to close his eyes, trying to ignore the nagging feeling of unease. But sleep didn't come easily. Throughout the night, Jack was plagued by strange dreams. In his dreams, the room was cold and dark, and the figures in the mirror weren't reflections, they were something else. They moved on their own, independent of Jack and Anna, their faces obscured by shadows. He could hear them whispering, but the words were distorted, just beyond his understanding. Jack woke with a start, his heart racing. He glanced at the mirror, but everything seemed normal. The reflection showed only their room, bathed in the soft light of dawn. He shook his head, chalking it up to a bad dream. But over the next few days, the strange feeling around the mirror only grew stronger. Jack began to notice more oddities. Sometimes, when he walked past the mirror, he thought he saw movement in the corner of his eye, as if someone or something was standing just outside the frame, watching him. At other times, the reflections seemed slightly warped, as if the room in the mirror was twisting and stretching in ways it shouldn't. One evening, as Anna was brushing her hair in front of the mirror, Jack stood behind her, watching her reflection. She was humming softly to herself, lost in thought. But as Jack watched, he noticed something strange. Anna's reflection was smiling, but Anna herself wasn't. Her face was calm and neutral, but the version of her in the mirror had a small, unsettling smile curling at the edges of her lips. Jack said, his voice low and urgent. "Anna," she asked, turning to look at him. "What is it?" "The mirror, your reflection, it's smiling." Anna frowned and turned back to the mirror, staring at her reflection. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then, slowly, the reflection's smile returned, wider and more sinister than before. Anna gasped and stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. What is that?" Jack grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the mirror. "I don't know, but we need to get rid of it." That night, they moved the mirror back up to the attic. Jack covered it with an old sheet and pushed it to the far corner, out of sight. But even with the mirror gone, the strange feeling lingered. Jack could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on him, a cold, invisible hand resting on his shoulder. The dreams returned, more vivid than ever. In his dreams, Jack found himself standing in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. But the reflection wasn't his. The figure in the mirror was twisted, its face stretched into a grotesque grin, its eyes dark and empty. Jack tried to turn away, but he couldn't move. The figure in the mirror reached out, its hand pressing against the glass. Jack could feel the coldness of it, even in his dream. He woke up in a cold sweat, his heart hammering in his chest. He whispered to Anna one morning, his voice shaking. "That mirror, it's not right. I can't stay in this house." Anna nodded, her face pale. She had been having nightmares too, though she hadn't wanted to admit it. She said, "I don't care about the house anymore. I just want to get away. We'll leave tomorrow." But that night, something changed. As they lay in bed, Jack could hear a faint whispering sound coming from the attic. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but the more he listened, the more he realized it was something else. The whispering was soft, but there was something dark and menacing beneath it. Jack asked, sitting up in bed, "Do you hear that?" Anna nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "It's coming from the mirror." Jack stood up, his hands trembling. "I'm going to go check," Anna said. "No," grabbing his arm. "Don't, please." But Jack couldn't ignore it. He had to know what was happening. He grabbed a flashlight and slowly made his way up the stairs to the attic. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispering grew louder, more insistent. When he reached the attic, he saw that the sheet covering the mirror had fallen away. The mirror stood there, uncovered, its surface shimmering in the darkness. Jack approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. As he stood before the mirror, he could see his reflection, but just like before, it wasn't quite right. The figure in the mirror smiled at him, its eyes glinting with malice. Then, before Jack could react, the figure in the mirror reached out, its hand pushing through the glass. Jack stumbled back, but the hand grabbed his wrist, pulling him toward the mirror. Anna's voice echoed from behind him. "Jack." He turned to see her standing at the top of the stairs, her face pale with terror. The mirror's grip tightened, dragging Jack closer. He could feel the coldness seeping into his skin, freezing him from the inside out. Jack shouted, but Anna didn't move. She stared at the mirror, her eyes wide with horror. And then, just as Jack thought he was about to be pulled into the mirror, the grip loosened, the hand withdrew, vanishing back into the glass. Jack collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Anna rushed to his side, pulling him away from the mirror. She whispered, her voice trembling. What was that?" Jack said, his voice weak. "I don't know, but we need to leave now." The next morning, they packed their bags and left the house, not daring to look back. They never spoke of the mirror again, but the memory of it haunted them for years. They moved to a new town, far from the forest, far from the house. But sometimes, in the stillness of the night, Jack would hear a faint whispering, like the wind through the trees, and he would wonder if the mirror was still out there, waiting for someone else to find it. And though they never returned to the old house, Jack knew deep down that some things, some objects carry with them more than just the weight of time. They carry the echoes of lives long past, whispers of forgotten souls, and something darker, waiting to be acknowledged. For years, Jack and Anna tried to forget the events at the old stone house. They moved into a smaller, more modern home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, far from any woods or forgotten attics. Their new house was bright and open, with large windows that let in the sun and walls painted in soft, welcoming hues. Everything felt safer here, yet, despite the distance, the memory of that mirror lingered like a shadow neither could fully shake. At first, they resumed life as normal, going to work, tending to their new garden, hosting friends for weekend dinners. But something between them had subtly shifted. Jack had become withdrawn, spending more time in his workshop, often with the door closed. Anna found herself waking in the middle of the night, a cold sweat clinging to her skin, as if she'd been dreaming of that house again, though the details always slipped away like mist in the morning. One evening, about 6 months after they had moved, Jack came home with a strange look on his face. He placed his bag down on the kitchen counter and sat at the table, his hands resting in front of him as if he were holding something invisible. Anna, who had been reading on the couch, looked up, sensing something was wrong. "Jack?" she asked, walking over to him. "What is it?" He looked up at her, his eyes distant. "I've been dreaming about the mirror again." Anna froze, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" "We got rid of it. We left it behind." Jack shook his head slowly, his brow furrowed. "I don't think we ever left it behind, Anna. I think it followed us." Anna felt a cold chill crawl down her spine. "Don't say that, Jack. It's not here. We moved. We're safe now." Jack's hands trembled as he spoke. "I know it sounds crazy, but I keep seeing it. Not just in my dreams, either. Sometimes, when I walk by a window or look into a reflection, any reflection, I catch a glimpse of it. Just for a second. But it's there, waiting." Anna's throat tightened. She had been having similar experiences, though she had pushed them aside, convincing herself they were just remnants of her fear. She didn't want to believe the mirror still had any hold over them. She said quietly, "Jack," placing a hand on his shoulder, "it's just our minds playing tricks on us. It can't be real. We have to move on." But Jack wasn't convinced. "I thought that too at first. But today, I saw something. Something that proves we're not imagining it." Anna asked, "What do you mean?" Her voice barely above a whisper. Jack stood up, walked over to his bag, and pulled something out. It was an old, worn piece of paper. He handed it to Anna without a word. She unfolded the paper and saw it was a photograph, one of the few they had taken before leaving the stone house. It showed Jack and Anna standing in front of the fireplace, smiling, before they had brought the mirror down from the attic. But as Anna stared at the photo, her breath caught in her throat. In the background, faint but unmistakable, was the outline of the mirror. And behind the glass, barely visible in the shadows, stood a figure. It wasn't them, it was something else. Something dark, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. Anna whispered, her hands shaking. That wasn't there before. Jack nodded. I found it in a drawer today while I was cleaning. It's like the mirror is calling to us. I don't think it ever let us go. The days that followed were tense. Jack became consumed with trying to figure out what the mirror was and why it seemed to have followed them. He spent hours researching old folklore and myths, hoping to find some explanation for the strange events they had experienced. Anna, on the other hand, tried to ignore the creeping dread that filled their home, focusing instead on her writing and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But it was impossible to ignore for long. One night, as they sat in the living room, the television playing softly in the background, a loud crash came from the hallway. Jack and Anna both jumped to their feet, their hearts pounding in unison. They rushed toward the sound, and when they reached the hallway, they found the source. The large mirror they had hung near the entrance had fallen from the wall, shattering into pieces on the floor. Anna knelt down, staring at the shards of glass. Her reflection was broken, fragmented into countless pieces. But in one of the larger shards, she saw something that made her blood run cold. There, in the reflection, stood the same dark figure from the photograph, its twisted smile staring back at her from the fractured glass. She screamed, stumbling back into Jack, who grabbed her, his face pale with fear. She gasped, pointing to the shard. Do you see it? Jack nodded slowly. Yes, I see it. They both stood frozen, staring at the shard, watching as the figure's smile grew wider, its hollow eyes staring back at them with a knowing glint. The room felt colder, the air thick with a presence they couldn't see but could feel all around them. Jack whispered, "We have to destroy it. We have to get rid of every reflection, every mirror." They spent the next hour frantically removing every mirror from the house, shattering each one and throwing the pieces into garbage bags. They even covered the windows with heavy curtains, desperate to stop the reflections from coming back. But as the night grew deeper and the house plunged into darkness, the whispers returned. It started softly, just like before, a faint sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Jack and Anna sat huddled together in the living room, the bags of broken glass piled by the door, listening as the whispering grew louder, more insistent. The voice called, low and sinister, "Jack, Anna, Jack, Anna." They both froze, their blood turning to ice. The voice wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from within. Jack stood up slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. He said, "It's the mirror, it's still here." His voice barely audible. Anna shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "But we got rid of it. We destroyed all of them." Jack's eyes darted around the room, searching for the source. Then, his gaze fell on the pile of shards they had left by the door. The largest shard, resting on top of the heap, caught the light just so, and there, in its cracked surface, the figure smiled back at them. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls, filling their minds with a terrible certainty. The mirror hadn't been left behind. It had never been an object at all. It was a presence, a consciousness that had attached itself to them the moment they first touched it. No matter how many mirrors they broke, no matter how far they ran, it would always find a way to reflect itself back into their lives. As the figure in the shard reached out once more, Jack grabbed Anna's hand, pulling her close. "It's not about the mirror, Anna, it's about us. It always has been." Tears streamed down Anna's face as she realized the truth. They couldn't escape it. The mirror was a part of them now, a dark reflection of their own fears and doubts, a haunting they could never truly leave behind. And in the silence that followed, they both knew there was no running from the shadows in the glass. The mirror had always been watching. always waiting. And now, it had them. The house was empty the next morning. Jack and Anna were gone, but the broken shards of glass remained scattered across the floor, catching the morning light in strange, twisted reflections. The house, once filled with their warmth and love, stood cold and silent, as if waiting for its next inhabitants. The mirror, though broken, had left its mark. The shadows in the glass lingered, whispering to anyone who dared to listen. And the lesson, though painful, was clear. Some reflections are not meant to be understood. Some things, when unearthed, never truly leave. And once you've glimpsed into the darkness, it will always find a way to look back. In the end, the mirror was not just an object, it was a mirror of their souls, reflecting the darkness they had never acknowledged. It had whispered to them, shown them their deepest fears, and in their desperation to escape, they had only drawn closer to it. The house remained, waiting for someone else to see the truth. And when they did, the mirror would be ready, waiting to whisper again.